Have you ever wondered why, in a world pulsing with pressure and prejudice, some women seem to walk in their own light? They carry a quiet calm in their hearts and an unshakable strength in their steps, moving through the noise of modern life as if tuned to a different, more profound frequency. Meanwhile, so many others feel adrift, living in a state of perpetual insecurity, caught in the exhausting trap of trying to please everyone. They build their lives around the validation of others, endlessly searching for a happiness that always seems to be just outside their grasp, like a beautiful mirage that dissolves upon approach. The answer, the real key to this radiant self-possession, doesn't lie in a new self-care routine, another inspiring book, or a weekend course on boosting your self-worth. Those are just bandages placed on a much deeper wound. The true answer lies buried deep within the unconscious mind, in a place the great 20th century psychoanalyst Carl Jung called the undiscovered self. It's a realm to which the modern woman has, for the most part, lost the key. Jung believed that a woman's journey to becoming her truest self isn't an act of rebellion. It isn't about rejecting the world or her own innate gentleness and capacity for love. Instead, it's a profound awakening, a process where she learns to reclaim these parts of herself, offering them not out of obligation or a desperate need for approval, but consciously, freely, and from a place of unshakable wholeness. So, what is the secret of a woman who is genuinely, deeply happy and confident? It's not a secret to be learned, but a truth to be uncovered. Today, we embark on that journey together to find the key that unlocks that truth within you. And if you are a woman who is bone-tired from playing roles you never auditioned for, if you are yearning to finally take a full breath and feel what it's like to simply be your true self, then this journey is for you. Because at the end of this path lies a version of you that is more radiant, more real, and more powerful than you have ever been allowed to become until now. The secret to this awakening, the first and most crucial step, is the realization that the map you've been given is wrong. The treasure is not, and never has been, outside of you. It is buried within. Our modern society relentlessly conditions women to look outward, to measure their worth against an impossible, ever-shifting image of having it all. A high-flying career, a body sculpted to perfection, a flawless relationship, a life that looks dazzling through the curated lens of social media, a life, in short, that is constantly validated by the applause of others. But here lies the devastating irony. The closer a woman gets to achieving these external standards, the more hollow she often feels inside. She stands on the peak of her achievements and finds the air is thin, the view empty. She smiles for the photo, but the light has gone out of her eyes. She collects accolades and promotions, yet finds no real peace in her heart. As Carl Jung so wisely said, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. To look outside is to live in a dream state, chasing phantoms constructed by culture and commerce. To look inside is to begin the arduous, beautiful process of waking up to who you really are. Think back. From a very young age, most women are enrolled in an unspoken curriculum of agreeableness. Be a good girl. Be considerate. Don't make waves. Please others. They learn to arrange their faces into a pleasant smile when they are seething with anger or sadness. They learn to nod and agree when every fiber of their being is screaming no. They learn to put their own needs, their own feelings, their own desires so far down the list that eventually, they forget they ever had them in the first place. Because that, they are told, is what a good, lovable woman does. Over years, this conditioning becomes a second skin. They lose touch with their own inner voice, and then, after enough time has passed, they come to believe they never had a clear voice to begin with. Jung had a name for this compliant, carefully constructed public face, the persona, the mask. It's not your true self. It is an intricate, often beautiful, and highly functional costume you create to be loved, to be accepted, to survive in the world. It's the perfect employee, the supportive partner, the selfless mother, the fun friend. The persona is not inherently bad. It's a necessary tool for navigating social life. But the danger, the deep spiritual peril, comes when a woman lives in her persona for so long that she forgets it's a mask. She fuses with it. The role she is playing becomes her entire reality, and she can no longer distinguish her true, authentic desires from the expectations that have become so deeply ingrained in her psyche. This is the successful executive who has it all: the corner office, the beautiful family, the admiration of her peers, yet finds herself weeping in the silence of her bathroom every night, gripped by a profound loneliness she cannot name. A stranger in a life she meticulously built. This is the mother who orchestrates everyone's lives with flawless precision, who meets every need and soothes every fear, yet cannot remember the last time she, herself, felt genuinely happy or cared for. These are not signs of failure. They are distress signals from the soul. They are the undeniable evidence that you have lived for too long in the external world, the world of the persona, while the vast, rich world within has been tragically neglected. And that inner world, according to Jung, is not some serene, peaceful garden waiting to be discovered. It is an uncharted forest, a deep and turbulent ocean, teeming with all the parts of yourself you have forgotten, rejected, or learned to despise. It is the place where your shadow resides. The shadow is the darkness within you, but it is not evil. In the shadow lies everything you have dared not to face. Your untamed anger, your searing envy, your deepest hurts, your desperate longing to be free, to say no without guilt, to live a life that is messy and wild and gloriously imperfect. The shadow holds the parts of you that you may have expressed as a child, your raw creativity, your righteous fury, your untamed curiosity, but we're told we're selfish, too much, bad, or unlovable. And so, you did what you had to do to survive. You suppressed it. You pushed it down into the dark. You became an agreeable woman. But in doing so, you also extinguished the very fire that gives you your life force, your passion, and your power. Jung's great insight was this: you cannot destroy the shadow. Any attempt to do so is a war against yourself, a war you can never win. He urged us to integrate it, to turn and face it, to bring its contents into the light of consciousness. Because the shadow, that dusty and disavowed part of you, is not your enemy. It is a vibrant, misunderstood source of your life energy, your creativity, and your authenticity. A woman who is unaware of her shadow will be haunted by it forever. She will grapple with that nagging feeling of, I don't know who I am, or I feel so empty despite having everything. She will be sabotaged by her own unconscious resentments and desires, erupting in ways she cannot control. But when she dares to face her shadow, she begins the sacred work of reclaiming the power that was taken from her, or rather, the power she was taught to give away. Imagine a woman who feels a sharp sting of irritation every time a colleague receives praise or a promotion. Her persona, the good girl, is horrified by this feeling. She fears being seen as petty or envious. So she dismisses the feeling, pushes it down, and tries to act noble and supportive, all while tormenting herself inwardly for her unacceptable emotions. But if she were to turn and face her shadow, to sit with that envy without judgment, she might hear what it's really trying to tell her. She might acknowledge, a part of me wants that recognition. A part of me wants to rise. A part of me feels unseen and hungry for more. She would realize there's nothing inherently wrong with that emotion. It's a powerful voice from within, a compass needle pointing directly at her own suppressed ambition. It is a fierce drive urging her to grow, to step out of her comfort zone, to claim her own space. Only when that emotion is brought into the light and accepted does it stop wreaking havoc from the shadows. It transforms from a source of shame into a source of fuel. As Jung wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. How many women find themselves asking, why do I always end up in relationships that hurt me? Why do I keep attracting partners who take me for granted? Why can't I ever say no without feeling a tidal wave of guilt? These repeating patterns are not a cruel twist of fate. They are not a sign of weakness. They are the shadow in action, unconscious cycles operating in the dark, pulling the strings of your life. The inner journey begins the moment you stop calling it fate and start calling it what it is, an unexamined part of yourself. This journey inward doesn't start with 10 minutes of forced morning meditation, hoping for a magical infusion of peace. It doesn't begin by reading another self-help book, expecting a lightning bolt of profound change. It begins with the raw, unglamorous courage to face yourself without judgment. It is the practice of looking in the mirror and not turning away. It happens when you finally hear that quiet, persistent voice in your head whispering, "I'm so tired. I'm scared. I want more than this." And for the first time in your life, you don't shush it. You don't dismiss it. You listen. The inner journey has no clear schedule, no 5-step plan. It happens in the quiet moments when you allow yourself to pause, to feel the ache, to question everything. It happens when you are brave enough to be alone, quiet enough to finally hear the voice of your own heart, the voice that echoed so freely when you were a child, before it was silenced by 1,000 tiny wounds and 1,000,000 expectations. And then, one day, you'll find yourself doing something different, not for anyone else, but for you. You'll say no to something, and you won't offer a long, apologetic explanation. You'll walk in the opposite direction from the crowd, even when they all tell you you're wrong. You'll face a fear that once paralyzed you, and this time, you won't retreat. That isn't rebellion. That is awakening. Happy women are not happy because they have perfect lives. They are happy because they have become loyal to their own essence, even if it means breaking every mold others have set for them. True, lasting confidence doesn't come from a university degree, a perfect figure, or the admiring glances of others. It comes from the profound, bone-deep understanding that I am myself. No more, no less. And that is enough. The secret lies right there, not in the noisy world outside, but in the most honest, and sometimes most difficult, conversation you will ever have, the one with yourself. When a woman finally turns inward, she stops waiting for someone to come and save her. She becomes her own guide, her own healer, her own champion. And from that moment on, the world no longer has the power to define her, because she is finally defining herself. As a woman begins this courageous journey inward, confronting her shadow, and acknowledging the parts of herself she was taught to despise, a pivotal shift occurs. She is not just shedding what no longer belongs to her. She is also beginning to recognize the sacred parts that were always there, lying dormant under layers of conditioning and pain. As she ventures deeper into the vast, uncharted territory of her own unconscious, she encounters a powerful and luminous archetype, a force of nature that has been waiting for her return, the goddess within. Now, this is not the goddess you see in advertisements, the glamorous, seductive, airbrushed image of perfection crafted to sell you something. The true goddess within is an ancient, wild, instinctual, and deeply intuitive life force. She is the sacred feminine, what Jung would call an archetype, a primal, universal image embedded in the collective unconscious of humanity, existing across all time and all cultures. Jung believed that within every woman lies this original essence of profound creativity, cyclical wisdom, and a deep, instinctual connection to nature and the mystical currents of life. But for centuries, our society has systematically silenced this archetype. It has been tamed, domesticated, and reduced, forcing women into narrow roles of service, agreeableness, or superficial beauty, all while fearing the raw power of their true feminine nature. Imagine a little girl, perhaps this was you, who loved the feeling of mud between her toes, who shouted with glee as she climbed trees, who scribbled her dreams and stories on walls, and who asked endless, challenging questions about the world. She was alive, buzzing with a raw, unfiltered life force. But as she grew, that untamed spirit was systematically corrected. She was told, "Good girls sit quietly." Is that really how a young lady talks? Don't be so dramatic. No one will love you if you're that stubborn. And so, with each correction, a lock turned. The goddess within her, the voice of pure instinct, untamed creativity, bold curiosity, and fierce autonomy, was slowly but surely locked away in the deepest dungeon of her psyche. She was labeled as excessive, unacceptable, or in need of fixing. And so, as an adult, she carries a deep, unnamed void she cannot explain. She might spend years chasing external things to fill it: the perfect relationship, the flawless body, the validation of a successful career. But behind the sharp, confident eyes, and the carefully applied red lipstick lies a faint, persistent whisper she can only hear in the dead of night. There's something I've forgotten. There's a part of me that's missing. That is the call of the buried goddess. That is the echo of her own lost power. No one is born disconnected from this feminine essence. It is programmed into the soul, a spiritual birthright. It is like a lighthouse meant to guide your way, a deep wellspring of creativity, intuition, gentleness, receptivity, and connection. But over time, this sacred energy is stifled by the rigid, patriarchal demands of society and the roles women are forced to play to survive and be accepted. Under this immense pressure, the feminine energy doesn't simply vanish. It retreats deep into the unconscious, making way for protective layers of armor, layers formed from unhealed wounds and the fear of being hurt again. Jung described this as a profound disconnection from the archetypal self, a state where the deepest, most authentic part of your soul is sealed away, waiting for the day you are brave enough to come back for it. Femininity is not a performance. It is a spiritual state. Jung often spoke of this energy as the anima, the inner principle tied to profound emotion, deep intuition, and the rich world of the unconscious. But for so many women, this inner world is shrouded in fear. The key to understanding why lies with the inner child. When the inner child is wounded, this vibrant feminine essence is the first part of the self to be locked away for safety. A little girl who was scolded for crying too much, mocked for being too sensitive, or laughed at for her big dreams grows up learning a devastating lesson. Her emotions are a liability, her softness is a weakness, and her desires are dangerous. She learns to suppress her feelings, to hide her vulnerability, and to feel safe only when she is being strong, rational, and in control. But at what cost? This survival strategy creates a deep fracture from the very source of her creativity, her joy, and the natural, flowing rhythm of her soul. Feminine energy is not about gender or appearance. It is a sacred force that lives in all of us. It is the part of your soul that knows how to receive love, how to flow with the currents of life rather than trying to force and control every outcome. It's the part of you that whispers, slow down, rest, you are safe. It is the source of your joy, your sensuality, your vulnerability, and the simple, profound beauty of just being. But for so many, this energy was suppressed early and forcefully. Perhaps you grew up in a world that only praised logic and achievement while shaming intuition and sensitivity. As a result, the inner child who once danced freely, dreamed boldly, and cried without shame learned to shrink. She learned to hide her magnificent essence, trading her authentic joy for a more acceptable performance. She learned to wield her strength like heavy armor, unaware that with every passing year, it was slowly burying her truth deeper and deeper. Jung taught that the archetype of the inner child is the very root of our freedom, our creativity, and our emotional vitality. So if you find it difficult to truly relax, if you struggle to enjoy pleasure without a nagging sense of guilt, if you find it almost impossible to express your authentic feelings without fear of judgment, you are not broken or off course. You are blocked. You have been in survival mode for decades, living in a world that implicitly demanded you abandon yourself to be loved. The sacred task now is to return, to begin the gentle, patient work of healing that wounded inner child and allowing her to guide you back to the woman you were always meant to be. Picture a small stream flowing through a quiet valley. At its source, it is cool, clear, and fluid. It moves with a natural instinct, winding its way around rocks and trees, sometimes flowing gently, sometimes rushing with power. It is simply being itself. But one day, the stream encounters a massive boulder blocking its path, a boulder of trauma, of shame, of societal expectation. Without understanding why the boulder is there, the stream knows it must adapt to survive. So it learns to trickle through tiny cracks, to slip through narrow, confined gaps, to navigate the world with a cautious, calculated skill. It begins to believe that its natural, powerful flow is dangerous and will only lead to more obstacles. The feminine energy within a woman is like that stream. It is, by its nature, a powerful, flowing, uncontrolled essence. But she has built up too many internal rules, too many outdated beliefs that whisper, "I am only valuable when I am useful," or "I am only safe when I make others happy." Like the stream that has been blocked by the boulder, the deepest, most life-giving part of her no longer flows freely to the surface. To restore that natural flow, a woman must first feel safe in her own body, in her own heart, and with her own emotions. And this can only happen by reconnecting with and reparenting her inner child. An inner child who was never loved unconditionally cannot feel safe enough to open her heart. And so, as an adult, instead of gracefully receiving love and connection, she becomes suspicious and controlling. She rationalizes everything, needing to analyze every situation to death before she can even begin to trust. She builds fortresses to protect herself, not realizing these same walls are a prison that confines her most beautiful and powerful feminine essence. Feminine energy does not awaken through more effort, more striving, or more doing. It is stirred through surrender, through presence, and through a courageous trust in the natural flow of life. But a woman carrying the deep, unhealed fear of being hurt again cannot let go. She is always vigilant, always analyzing, always needing certainty before she can risk being vulnerable. In that state of hypervigilance, she drifts further and further away from her feminine core, not because she lacks it, but because she was taught, long ago, that living from that place is dangerous. Recall the last time you held back your true emotions for fear of being judged. The last time you chose silence over expressing your needs because you feared rejection. That was the moment your feminine energy was stifled once more. And the quiet tragedy is that you probably told yourself you were being mature or wise, when in reality, you were simply repeating a survival reflex learned in childhood. The moment your inner child first learned that she had to suppress herself to survive. Carl Jung saw the restoration of this feminine essence not as a self-improvement project, but as a profound spiritual task. It is the work of reconnecting with your original soul through radical acceptance, deep compassion, and the continued integration of your shadow. It is daring to sit with the parts of you that have been labeled weak, useless, or too emotional, and saying to them, "I see you. You have a right to exist. You are a part of me." As a woman begins this sacred process of reconnecting with the goddess within, she also unlocks a buried life force, a powerful inner guidance system, her intuition. It's a faculty that cannot be measured or proven by science, but every single one of us has felt it. That gut feeling that something isn't right. That quiet but insistent sense that, "I don't belong here." That mysterious inner call to try a different path, even when it makes no logical sense. For years, women have been taught to dismiss this profound inner knowing. We learn to call it impulsive, irrational, or just plain wrong. We learn to poll our friends, to read expert opinions, to ask everyone else what we should do, instead of consulting the deep well of wisdom that resides within us. Jung believed that intuition is the language of the unconscious, the bridge between our personal psyche and the vast, collective wisdom of the self. A woman who is disconnected from her intuition is like a magnificent ship set adrift on the ocean without a compass. She may look powerful and impressive on the surface, but deep down, she is lost. She doesn't truly know where she's headed. When a woman begins to awaken this primal flow within, the flow of the goddess, of her emotions, of her intuition, of her true essence, the first thing she often feels is not relief, but upheaval. The old structures of her personality begin to crumble. She is no longer who she was, but she is not yet who she will become. She is standing in a powerful, disorienting, and sacred transitional space. This is the very beginning of the journey that Jung called individuation, the path to wholeness. It is not about becoming some idealized, perfect version of a woman. It is the holy, lifelong process of returning to the unique, complex, and irreplaceable essence of who you truly are. Carl Jung never believed that the goal of life was to become the best version of yourself, as our modern culture so relentlessly preaches. He wasn't interested in the pursuit of perfection, nor did he encourage conforming to some external moral or aesthetic standard. For Jung, the ultimate aim of a human life, the entire purpose of our spiritual growth, was to become whole. Not better, not shinier, not more successful, but whole. This sacred journey toward wholeness is what he called individuation. Put more simply, it is the journey of returning to your true, original self. Individuation is not a process of adding something new to who you are. It is a process of subtraction, of courageously peeling away everything that does not truly belong to you. It is the shedding of borrowed beliefs you inherited from your family, the stripping away of roles you learned to play to survive in society, and the dismantling of the thick, protective layers you built around your heart to keep from getting hurt. It is the conscious continuation of the work we've been exploring, turning to face your shadow, not to vanquish it, but to embrace the rejected parts of yourself as vital sources of your life force. It is the sacred act of bringing the wounded inner child into the light of your compassion, of reawakening the divine feminine essence that was sealed away, and of revisiting the memories, big and small, that shaped you. Individuation is not a radiant, glowing ascent into the light. It is a journey downward and inward into the rich, dark soil of your own roots. It requires you to confront your deepest wounds, to make a kind of peace with your past, and to learn, finally, how to live with your entire being, the strong parts and the weak, the rational and the intuitive, the darkness and the light. Only by integrating all these seemingly contradictory parts can you step out of a fragmented life, a life where you are constantly striving to become someone else, and into a life that is truly and authentically your own. A life that is autonomous, deeply meaningful, and rooted in the unshakable ground of your own soul. One woman who embarked on this path shared her experience. For 30 years, I lived as if I were wearing a heavy mask. I was an expert at it. I always acted the way others expected. I always smiled even when my heart was breaking inside. I was the cool girl, the strong one. But when I started the terrifying work of going back, of listening to the little girl inside me I had abandoned, of facing the parts of myself I was once so deeply ashamed of, my neediness, my anger, I had a shocking realization. I had never truly lived a single day for myself. From that moment, I knew I could never go back. It was the hardest and most beautiful decision of my life. The process of individuation is far from easy. There will be long stretches on this path where you feel utterly lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. You no longer belong to the old places, the old relationships, the old version of yourself, but you don't yet know who you are in the new world that is slowly taking shape. This journey demands the courage to step into completely uncharted territory, the landscape of old memories, imposed beliefs, and the unnamed fears that have been running your life from the shadows. Jung believed that we cannot truly grow unless we are willing to confront the psychological inheritance we all carry, the chorus of voices in our heads that do not actually belong to us, but to our mothers, our grandmothers, to society, to dogmatic beliefs, or to borrowed morals. A woman on the path of individuation gradually learns to distinguish her own voice from the echoes of others. Not to angrily reject them, but to calmly and clearly discern which voice is hers and which is simply a ghost from the past. And right here lies the greatest challenge of all, the resistance you will inevitably encounter from the world around you. When you begin to change in a fundamental way, you disrupt the unspoken social contracts in all of your relationships. Your transformation holds up a mirror to others, and not everyone is ready or willing to look at their own reflection. A woman who begins to say a clear, unapologetic no where she once said yes, who starts setting firm boundaries in relationships that were once comfortably boundaryless, who stops contorting herself to please everyone around her, she is not being rude. She is not rebelling. She has simply stopped playing a role that was suffocating her. But to those who benefited from that role, her authenticity feels like an attack. They will ask you, "Why are you so cold lately? Is something wrong with you? You used to be so much nicer." What they are really saying, beneath the surface of their confusion or hurt, is this: "I cannot handle the fact that you are no longer someone I can predict and control. Your new freedom makes me deeply uncomfortable." One woman shared the story of how, since childhood, she had been the designated glue holding her chaotic family together. She was the mediator of every conflict, the emotional anchor for her mother, her siblings, everyone. But when she grew exhausted to the point of collapse, she finally stopped. She stopped carrying emotions that were not hers to carry. She started setting boundaries. She stopped taking the frantic late-night calls meant to make her mother feel better. The result? She was called selfish, ungrateful, and cold. But deep down, beneath the sting of those words, she knew that for the very first time in her life, she was living as herself. And that, though painful, was the taste of real freedom. Jung called these moments a confrontation with the self. The goal is not to conquer the parts of you that others find difficult, but to understand and integrate them. No longer divided between an idealized self and your real self, you begin to restructure your entire inner ecosystem, your values, your beliefs, your boundaries, and even the way you move through the world. Each day, you make choices from a place of conscious intention rather than unconscious reflex. Each choice is another brick in the foundation of a new self, not one shaped by society, but one you build from the inside out. The true source of a woman's strength is discovered on this difficult path. As she journeys deeper into individuation, she uncovers a startling truth. Her power does not lie in becoming perfect, but in daring to embrace herself fully, both the light and the dark. Lasting confidence is not a cloak you put on. It is a spine you build from within. And this can only happen when you dare to live as a whole, unadorned person. Too many women have been deceived by the shimmering mirage of the ideal woman. It is a fabricated formula, a gilded cage wrapped in the language of empowerment. The more you strive for that impossible ideal, the further you drift from your actual self. Then one day, you have the heartbreaking realization that the perfection you were chasing was a prison you were building for yourself, bar by bar. Wholeness is radically different. It does not demand that you be anything specific. It only requires that you be fully present with what is, whether that is your exhaustion, your anger, your hurt, or your unnamed desires. Jung called this process integration, the sacred unification of all the fragmented parts of the soul into a cohesive whole. No more denial. No more shoving your fears under the bed. No more pretending everything is fine when your world is falling apart. As Jung said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. You cannot become whole by rejecting the parts of yourself you dislike. The more a woman denies her anger, her envy, or her fear, the more these powerful emotions control her from the unconscious. But when she dares to acknowledge them, to engage with them, to allow them a place in the vastness of her heart, she becomes truly powerful from within. Wholeness also means reconnecting with your body, not as an object to be disciplined and controlled, but as a sacred vessel. Women are taught that their bodies must meet 1,000 external standards. Be slim, be alluring, but not too alluring. Be youthful, be acceptable. In the frantic effort to make their bodies right, they lose their primal, joyful connection to this vessel that holds their emotions, their memories, and their very life. Think of the women you know exercising out of a deep hatred for their current bodies, dieting out of a fear of comparison, wearing makeup to paint on a face that will be deemed beautiful in the eyes of others. Have they ever stopped to ask, if my body were my best friend, how would I care for it? Would I punish it like this? When you begin to truly listen to the body's signals of exhaustion, to the pure joy of movement that feels good, to the way of eating that makes you feel vibrant and alive, not to be more beautiful, but to be more yourself. That is when you begin to feel truly at home, and therefore confident, in whatever form you inhabit. When a woman begins to live in this state of wholeness, the way she moves through the world fundamentally changes. She no longer performs. She no longer tries to impress. She doesn't need to do anything to be loved, because she has finally learned to love herself through a complete and unconditional acceptance. And that energy, the quiet, grounded energy of someone who has made peace with herself, is what makes her magnetic, compelling, and unshakable. This doesn't mean she is free of flaws or struggles. It means she no longer fears them. She is no longer at war with herself. And because of this inner peace, she is no longer swayed by the desperate need to prove herself or the crippling fear of rejection. She knows that if someone leaves her life because she is living authentically, they were never meant to stay. And if someone stays, it is because they are brave enough to love her in all her magnificent wholeness. Finally, as she steps out of the rigid mold of perfection and into the state of wholeness, something miraculous begins to happen. She discovers that her journey of healing does not end with herself, but becomes a gateway for others. Jung asserted that no individual exists in isolation. We are all vibrant threads in the vast, interconnected tapestry of the collective unconscious. This is especially true for women. When one woman awakens, she does not merely transform her own life. She begins to heal the silent wounds passed down from her mother, her grandmother, and the unfulfilled dreams of the women who came before her. She breaks the chain. This is the resonance effect. Your authentic presence becomes a quiet invitation to other women who are watching, but do not yet dare to act. You, too, can be yourself. Simply by being, you become a keeper of the flame for other women's journeys. And as you live more authentically, you don't need to seek out the right people. You become a source of vibration, and those on the same frequency will inevitably find you. True connection doesn't make you feel smaller. It makes you grow in your own eyes. You realize you don't need anyone to feel whole, but when you stand beside other women on their own brave journeys, you are no longer just an I. You become part of a we, a collective of imperfect but authentic souls. Imagine a small seed lying dormant deep beneath the frozen earth of winter. No one sees it. No one praises it. It has no flowers, no leaves, no applause. But there, in the darkness and the cold, something sacred is happening quietly. Inside, it begins to crack its own shell, not to rush upward toward the light, but to break open into itself. A woman on the journey back to her own essence is like that seed. Each time she is honest with a part of herself she once abandoned, another layer of hard earth splits open. Wholeness does not come from the promise of the light ahead, but from the courage to stand still in your own darkness without turning away. And the silence of a woman who has stopped trying to be someone else is the most powerful voice of all. So, if you are in that phase right now, where everything familiar is crumbling while the new has yet to take shape, do not be afraid. This is not the end. This is the first crack of the seed. And a seed only breaks its shell when it is, at last, ready to live. Ultimately, this journey does not promise you an easy life, but it promises something far deeper, far more precious, an authentic one. It promises that you will no longer have to abandon yourself to exist. You will live fully, authentically, and finally, freely.
Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next content. Goodbye.